somewhere in Colorado, high up in the Rocky Mountains, at 7,500 feet above sea level, there is a hotel. It has stood there for over 100 years, and some say it will stand there forever. It is white as a bone, grand as a palace, and it sits at the edge of the wilderness like something out of a dream. This is the Stanley Hotel. Now, before we go inside, you need to understand something. This place was not built to be haunted. It was built out of love. The year is 1903. A man named Freeland Oscar Stanley arrives in Colorado. He is dying. Tuberculosis. His lungs are failing. His doctors have told him he has months, maybe weeks. He is finished, but then something happens. Something his doctors could not explain. The mountain air of Estes Park begins to heal him. Slowly, quietly, impossibly. The man who was supposed to die does not die. And Freeland Oscar Stanley falls completely in love with this place. He looks out at these mountains and he makes a decision. He says, I am going to build something here. Something that lasts forever. In 1909, the Stanley Hotel opens its doors. White colonial architecture, a grand ballroom, electric lights, one of the first hotels in America to have them, powered by Stanley's own generator. It was extraordinary. He brought his wife Flora with him. Oh, Flora. She was a pianist, a gifted pianist, and every single evening, without fail, Flora would sit down at the Steinway grand piano in the ballroom, and she would play. The music would drift through every hallway, every room, every corner of the building, like the hotel itself was breathing. Presidents stayed at the Stanley. John Philip Sousa, one of the most famous musicians in America, performed right there in that ballroom. The Witch, the powerful, the famous. They all made the journey up into the mountains just to be here. For decades, the Stanley Hotel was the most beautiful, most celebrated hotel in the entire American West. It was full of music, full of laughter, full of life. But something else was building here too. Something quiet, something that nobody noticed at first. Something that was growing in the walls, in the floors, in the empty hallways, late at night. The Stanley Hotel had started collecting souls. The first sign came in 1911, just 2 years after the hotel opened. A housekeeper named Elizabeth Wilson walked into room 217. She was there to prepare it for a new guest. She carried fresh white linens. She set them on the bed. She turned to light the gas lamp on the wall. The lamp exploded. The blast blew Elizabeth Wilson through the floorboards. She fell through the ceiling of the banquet hall below and crashed onto the floor. Staff rushed to her. By every right in this world, she should have been dead. She was not. She survived. Elizabeth Wilson recovered. And then she did something. Something that tells you everything you need to know about who she was. She came back to work. She walked back through those doors. She picked up her lemons, and she kept working at the Stanley Hotel until the very last day of her life. But then, staff began noticing things in room 217. Small things. At first, a guest would come down to breakfast and mention, almost embarrassed to say it, that someone had unpacked his suitcase in the night. His clothes folded neatly in the drawers. His shoes lined up perfectly by the door. His jacket hung carefully in the closet. He assumed it was the hotel staff, a turn-down service, something normal. It was not. This kept happening. Year after year, guest after guest, always men staying alone in room 217, always the same thing, waking up to find their belongings moved, folded, organized, their beds straightened, while they slept. Elizabeth Wilson, still taking care of her guests, even from the other side. Then came the children. The fourth floor of the Stanley Hotel has always been different. Staff do not like working up there alone. Even in the middle of the day, there is a feeling on that floor that is very difficult to describe. A heaviness, a sense that you are being watched. Late at night, guests on the fourth floor began reporting sounds in the hallway outside their rooms. The sound of children laughing, running, the patter of small feet up and down the corridor. Guests would open their doors. The hallway would be completely empty. This happened so regularly, so consistently, that the hotel staff eventually completely empty. This happened so regularly, so consistently, that the hotel staff eventually gave it a name. They call them the fourth floor children. Nobody knows who they are. No child has ever died at the Stanley Hotel. No tragedy involving a young person has ever been recorded here. And yet, they run, and they laugh, and they stop the moment you open your door. Then, there is the ballroom. Flora Stanley died in 1955. The piano she had played every night of her life fell silent, except it did not. Within weeks of her death, guests were reporting hearing piano music drifting from the ballroom. Late at night, staff would go to investigate and find the ballroom locked, dark, completely empty. And yet, the music would stop the exact moment they opened the door. Over the decades that followed, dozens of staff members have walked into that ballroom to find piano keys depressed on their own, holding a note that nobody played, a song drifting out of silence, Flora still playing her evening concert for an audience that cannot see her. The Stanley Hotel had built a quiet, whispering reputation. Nothing violent, nothing dramatic, just small, impossible things that kept happening year after year to guest after guest in the hallways and rooms of this beautiful mountain palace. And then a writer came to stay. His name was Stephen King. He and his wife Tabitha checked into room 217 in September of 1974. The hotel was closing for the winter. They were the last guests. When the staff left that evening, Stephen King and his wife were completely alone in a 130-room hotel high in the Rocky Mountains, completely alone. That night, Stephen King had a nightmare, so vivid, so terrifying, that he woke up at 3 a.m. in a cold sweat. In the dream, a fire hose had chased his young son through these exact hallways, hunting him, coiling after him, like something alive. King sat up in bed in room 217, heart hammering, completely alone in a building that felt anything but empty. He got up, he walked to the window. He looked out at the dark, silent, moonlit grounds of the Stanley Hotel. Then he sat down and he began to write. The book he wrote became The Shining, one of the most terrifying novels ever published. A story about a hotel that feeds on people, a hotel with memory, a hotel that never truly empties. Stephen King said later that the Stanley Hotel gave him that story, that the nightmare was not just a dream, that the hotel had put something in his head. March 2019, a woman named Amanda drives alone from Denver to Estes Park. She is a travel writer. She does not fully believe in ghosts, at least not yet, but she has read every account she could find about the Stanley Hotel, and she has made a decision. She is going to stay in room 217, alone for one night with a camera running. She wants to see for herself. She checks in at 9 in the evening. The room is beautiful. Dark wood, vintage furniture, high ceilings, the smell of old carpet and history. She sets her camera on a tripod pointing at the bed, leaves it recording, goes to take a shower. When she comes back out of the bathroom, every light in the room is off. Not dimmed, off, completely dark. She stands in the bathroom doorway, telling herself it is a power issue, a fuse, something simple, something normal. She turns the lights back on, reviews the camera footage. The lights simply went out. No flicker, no warning. One moment on, the next moment off. Nothing else on the footage. She decides to stay. She gets into bed around midnight, reads for a while. At some point she turns off the lamp and tries to sleep. At 2:47 in the morning, she wakes up. She does not know why at first. The room is completely silent, but something feels wrong. She sits up in the dark and looks around the room. Her suitcase, which had been sitting closed and latched on the luggage rack across the room, is open. fully open, the lid thrown back, as if someone had been going through it. Amanda sits completely still. For a long moment, she tells herself she must not have latched it properly. She tells herself it fell open on its own. Then she notices the cold. The room has dropped in temperature dramatically. She can see her own breath in the darkness of room 217, a cloud of white mist with every exhale. This is a heated hotel room in March. There was no reason for this. She reaches for her phone on the nightstand to check the time. That is when she hears it. Children laughing, not faint, not distant, right outside her door. The sound of at least 2 children, maybe 3, laughing and running up and down the 4th floor hallway. Small feet on the old carpet, voices that are bright and clear and completely real. Amanda gets out of bed. She walks to the door. She puts her hand on the handle, takes a breath. She opens it. The hallway is empty, completely empty. The long corridor stretches away in both directions under dim wall lights. Not a single person, not a sound. The laughter had stopped the exact moment the door opened. She stands in the doorway for a long time, just looking. In the morning, she goes down to the front desk. She asks if any families with children had checked in that weekend. No, there were no children staying at the Stanley Hotel that night. Amanda published her account online. Within a month, it had been read over 2 million times. She went back to the Stanley Hotel 6 months later. She booked room 217 again. She said afterward that she could not explain what she experienced that night. She is not ready to call it a ghost. She is not sure what to call it. But she said this: the laughter sounded happy. Like children who had been playing in that hallway for a very long time and had no intention of stopping. Like children who had found a place they loved and never wanted to leave. The Stanley Hotel still takes reservations tonight. Room 217 is available. If you want it, you can have it. But now you know what waits for you on the 4th floor at 2:47 in the morning. Next week, we go to Savannah, Georgia, a cemetery where the dead have a long history of not staying where they are put. Subscribe, turn on notifications, and tonight, do not sleep near the door.